Hello, this is Felix Pasteris, and I'm taking off to the Army. This is 1940, July 1st, after 3 weeks of graduating for Joliet Township High School. And at that time of the year, it was warm and very comfortable, and we have a choice of two places to take basic training. One was in Rantoul, Illinois, or San Antonio, Texas. Well, naturally, not being out of the state of Illinois, I decided to take San Antonio. We got on a train. We got recruited in Chicago, first of all. Then they gave us tickets to go to San Antonio. So I joined with Bernie Hayes, and I decided that this would be the best thing for our family. This was the height of Depression in Illinois. And we decided to go south because his father was in Houston. He was a pilot on a ship, so we could see him. So on the way to Texas, some guy had a bottle of whiskey, and I tasted my first whiskey. I hated it. Ugh. It burned all the way to my stomach. I think that was the last taste of whiskey I had in a long time. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And we finally get to Texas, and there were so many recruits. This is the first. My serial number was 16,021,021, so we were the first of the new army. Before that, the government didn't have enough money to expand their army, and they get the rations on July 1st, so that's when they recruited us. And we were stationed in Brooks Field, which is an army base, but they didn't have any room for us, so we was in a hangar. There must have been 1,000 cots in this hangar, guys all over. So we just pick a couple of cots and lay down and went to sleep. It was a long ride to Texas on a train, and getting up the next morning, something else. We started our basic training. We had civilian clothes. But nobody had any. They didn't have any clothes for us, army clothes. So we had to use our. It was a good thing in the summer because it's hot down there too. So we had our summer clothes. It wasn't too bad. And the worst thing in our training was, a couple days into it, they made us do a duck walk. And duck walk helps straighten your hamstrings and your legs. And boy, the next morning we couldn't even walk. That's how bad it was. So we had a half a day off. Then after in the afternoon, they start putting us through other routines. And it was all basic training with the guns. And finally we got our clothes. And when it got in line, what happened, they just throw clothes at you. They look at you and throw your clothes at you. They had so many to take care of. And we finally all got clothing. Mine fit pretty good, but everything was always too large, which was normal. Being only 5'4" and a half, I was in a low end. If I was 5'3", they wouldn't have took me into service. Well, talking about not taking me into service, I was rejected in Chicago, and they said I didn't pass my physical exam. And I asked the doctor, I said, what was wrong? And he says, your chest didn't exam at all. And I said, I played athletes all the time, and I was a good runner. And he says, here, put your hands on your chest and let's see it. He says, wow, you are a good athlete. And he says, you passed, don't worry about it. So one of the incidences got it mixed up. Then working in their clothes in the sweat and everything, I had athlete's feet. Oh, one night I couldn't sleep at all. So next day I'd go to infirmary and they painted my legs purple. It did help, but it hurt. And I still have it today. I can get a shower and I can come out with athlete's feet, so, which is horrible. Yeah, in other words, you got to keep your feet dry, and it's hard to do in the sweat. And my shoes were 8 Ds, and I needed 9 Bs. So finally, after having trouble with my feet, they examined them again, and they said, well, you got the wrong shoes. So they fixed me up right, which made a big deal. So I could walk good, and there was no problem. Basic training was kind of nutty because using a gun, I never used a gun before in my life anyway. And a rifle, they're quite heavy. And after you tow them all day, that's what I mean. And we had shooting practice with a 45. And that's the other gun we had, a 45. And the 45 was so heavy, and you had to shoot it one hand. You couldn't use the other hand. I barely hit the target. So I hated that gun. It must have weighed about 10 pounds or more. And loaded it up. So I finally got used to shooting that thing, but I was very poor in target practice. And the rifle was a lot better because you could prop yourself up and you shoot pretty good. But basic training is mainly to be able to take orders, which was hard to do because you took orders from your family, but these sergeants were really hard on us. And finally, they got through to us. And after that, we got transferred to another base. The name of it was, Kelly Field. And Kelly Field was an advanced airfield. And one day we decided to take a ride in an airplane. I think it was a P-26. It was a 2-seater. And there was only one chute, and the 3 of us wanted to go up. And what happened is they flipped, and the odd man would get the chute. And this guy got the chute, went up, never came back, crash land. Wow, was that a shock. And for about a week or two, nobody would go up. So one day I said, I got to get up. And I got up. It was doing good. It was about right after breakfast, about 8 o'clock in the morning. Beautiful day. Went through so many maneuvers, I couldn't believe it. It was fun. Then all at once, I feel a little rumbling in my stomach, and I said, oh. So there's a stick in the back seat, so I hit the stick, and he turns around, what's wrong? And I says, I went signaling, I wanted to heave. And he just only laughed. He did a couple more barrel rolls and ups and downs, and I was getting worse and worse. And finally, he did another barrel roll, and I started. And the funny part of it, the whole top of the canopy was full of vomit. I felt so bad. And they didn't even have a vomit bag in the back seat. So finally got down. He says, clean up the damn airplane. So I felt a tone. Yeah. All I could do was lay down in the grass, and I don't know how the airplane got cleaned or anything, but I really felt bad. So I sort of flunked out of flying school. And it was my taste of flying, and I said, I don't like this. And I wanted to be a pilot, but no available. So we stayed there, and I got acquainted with a Mexican. He was his mother and father still live in Matamoros, Mexico, and he wanted to take me to his folks. And I says, yeah, let's go. We had a weekend, we took a weekend pass and went, and he had a car. He must have been in his 30 years old, or 30, he was elderly compared to me. And I started drinking tequila, and tequila is not bad drink. So I got pretty woozy, and then finally the sheriff wanted to take me, and he knew the sheriff anyway, so made a fake arrest, and so I started fighting with him, and the crowd was all laughing at me. So finally, when the night was over, we went to his house and went to sleep, and I met his mother and father. Nice people. And they found out what happened. They only laughed because they all drank tequila. Tequila was you'd put a little salt on your hand and then lick it and then take a shot of tequila. It wasn't bad. So I like tequila now. I still like it with salt. So we got back, and we had to go through some mountains, or big hills actually. And I said, geez, look, it's snowing. So he stops the car, and I said, what are you stopping for? He said, I never saw snow in my life. And it wasn't real snow flakes, it was pellets like. I scooped up and threw them at him, hit him a couple times, and we laughed and got back. He said, that's cold. And I said, yeah, it's ice. And it's funny to see somebody that never saw snow or anything like that before. So it was quite interesting. From there, the food got better too. And they were making a movie, I forget the name of the movie, but we went out to I Wanted Wings, I think that's what it was. Yeah, I Wanted Wings. So we went out to the runway and we were talking to everybody there, and it was quite interesting. Never seen a movie made in my life, so there were quite a few people there. So, and then we had more basic training. So I decided to get into the mechanic side of it. So we got into basic training, and then we got transferred to San Angelo, Texas. Oh, that was interesting. Out in the middle of West Texas, and nothing out there but mesquite, which is a short tree. And we did a lot of riding on horses out there, but there wasn't much to do. And so we heard that they were having the first fighter group out of South Sheffield, Michigan, and most of us from the Chicago area want to get out of there anyhow. We just hated it. So we put in for a transfer, and we heard that the first fighter group lost one squadron, and they were, I think it was the 71st, and they went to Philippines, and they needed a lot of people, so about 15 of us put in for transfer, and we never thought much of it. We rode horses out there, and that was kind of interesting. There was a lot of horse trails, a lot of Wild West. And about 3 weeks later, here comes our transfer. So we went and got our passes, and I asked the guy, I says, how do we get there? He said, I don't know. You guys put in for a transfer. It's your job to get out to get to Southfield, Michigan. So I said, okay. So a buddy of mine, Mutt and Jeff, he was about 6'5", something like that, real skinny. He was a mechanic, automobile mechanic from Indianapolis, or in Indiana. So I learned a lot about engines and everything from him too, so he helped me a lot. And we went to go to hitchhike back to Southfield. So he didn't want to use his uniform. I said, how are we going to get on? Anybody going to stop for us? Well, he said, I'll hide. I said, hide that big frame of yours? And he said, yeah. So a couple cars stop, and he comes running up, to get in too. And we showed them our pass there. No, they wouldn't hear nothing of it. So finally, don't come out so fast. So this one convertible come by, and I start talking to him. I said, I have a buddy over there, and he doesn't have his uniform on. And I showed him my thing. He happened to be a captain in Kansas City. So he says, get in. So we had a nice ride to Kansas City, and it was out of our way a little, but not bad. And this is in the fall of the year already, and it's getting cool and rainy and kind of miserable. So we stayed there, and then we headed for St. Louis. And then this guy was a salesman, and he was tired of driving. He said, you want to drive? And I said, I don't know how to drive. And Andy said, oh, man, I'll drive it. So we drove all the way to St. Louis. Well, we were lucky. He was tired. He slept most of the way. So we had fun. He put him in the back seat. We took over. And he traded some meals. And very nice to us. He was happy to get somebody to drive for him. So we get to St. Louis, and then he had to go over to Indiana, and I had to go to Illinois. So he said, come on, stay with my mom. She was a widow. So we went there and stayed with his mom for a couple of days. It was real nice. She treated us good. And she wanted to know all about the Army service. So I left him there, and I said, I'll see you at Selfridge. So I hitchhiked on 41 all the way to Chicago. I didn't have much trouble. And then when I got out of Chicago to go to Joliet, Route 66 is there, so it wasn't a bad road or anything like that, but nobody would pick me up. And then somebody took me off of that, Route 66, and then I got some little towns on the way back. Finally, I had to take a bus. And I didn't have it, you only got paid $21 a month. And they took a quarter out for retirement, so you didn't have much money. But by the time you ate out someplace, I know the food was only a couple of dollars, but boy, you had to stretch it. So I had to take the bus. I finally got to Joliet. I think it took me a couple days from Chicago to Joliet. It was only 40 miles. I was really disappointed. Got home, really felt good. And we had all our gear with us too, that was heavy. And finally, I just said that they don't know when I'm going to get there, so I took a week off. Oh, that was a nice time. Stayed with my family, and they all want to know how I was doing and all that. I told them all about it. And then I decided to get to Selfridge. It took me quite a few days to get to Selfridge. It was hard. And finally I got there, and I caught a cold. I really felt bad. And the weather was kind of rough too. We were right on lake, right alongside and that lake had come off of that. The wind would come off that lake, and boy, And there were new housing there too, all brand new. And finally, a couple of days after laying in the sack, the first sergeant comes in and he said, who are you? And I told him. And he says, I've been looking for you. And I said, I've been here. I'm sick. He says, get over to the infirmary. And I said, where's that at? And he's told me all that. And he said, after you get better, come and report to me. And he was a little guy just like me. He's full of fire. Boy, he was really nice to me. And finally I got to him and he made me get me my assignments and he said, you got to do this and that. And he said, you know you're a week late? I said, I don't know. I never had no time schedule. He said, okay, that's okay. You have a good time? And I said, yeah. So we got in our routine there. And then they were having troubles in Detroit. It was the unions they were striking. You got to remember, in them days, we were just still in the Depression, and some places were starting to make it a little. And I guess the car business started doing better. So they wanted a raise, and they were raising all kinds of gains. So we had to get all full gear and had our rifles with the bayonets on them and everything and stand duty there. I hated that because I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I'm fighting another guy and he didn't do anything to me, so I felt really bad. But we had to stand our line and had to protect each other. And then one guy tried to break through and they spiked him right in the rear end. Because we had our bayonets on, so no more of that. They never tried that after. They knew we meant business. So after that, we got playing baseball, and then we had a lot of visitors. There was a lot of talk about war at that time, more so than ever. And this is in the late 40s. And I got into the 21st Fighter Group, the 27th Fighter Squadron, and my buddy got in the 82nd, and he was in my outfit for a while, but he got in a different group, so I lost contact with him. And then we played baseball. It was a nice duty there, and then we had a patrol duty at night. You'd work 2 hours, then you sleep for 4 hours, and then around the clock. Oh, that was boring. But the one thing about it wasn't so boring for me because I wanted to learn how to drive a car. And here's what they call a tug. It's a little four-wheeler that pulls airplanes around. And so I got pretty good at it. They showed me how to it was a shift gear, and they showed me how to do that without using the clutch and stuff like that. We had a lot of fun on it. So I finally learned, you have to learn. I was going to learn to fly before I knew how to drive a car, so I did learn. So they put me on that duty, and I liked that duty, pulling things around. And so I learned to shift and everything. And when you pulled an airplane, you had to go pretty slow. Everything had to be extra careful. And then you had guys walking on the wings and stuff like that. So it was pretty easy. But they were very, very cautious because you didn't want to crash anything. And then you had to pull the airplanes in the hangar and some difficult shots. But you learn. And the hardest part is being on duty. Then 2 hours sometimes at midnight to 2, and then go to sleep, and then have to get up and go on some more. That is a really tough go. But and they told you're always worried about sabotaging. So, and the war was coming on in Europe pretty strong then, and there were more recruits coming in, and Selkirk Field at that time. There was a lot of things you could do besides working on an airplane. Oh yeah, we had it before we could work on an airplane. We had to take a test. A&E test, which is airplane mechanic and airplane. So it was. I thought it was pretty easy. And I guess I got a pretty good score. And then they give me. I became. I got my first stripe when I passed the test, so that was nice. It's $9 raise, so I was making $29. My buddy from Joliet, he was a corporal, and he was making $39 a month, and he could buy a car, a Ford, for 29. No, it was 39. He saved up 2 times, and that was the down payment. It was $39 a month. So, got a brand new car for $39 and $39 down. So that was pretty nice. So we go back and forth from Joliet, and we'd have to pitch in for the gasoline. So he'd fill up the car, and weekends we'd go back to Joliet. And if he was on duty, he couldn't go. We'd have to get somebody else. It was always easy getting a ride to Chicago, but to Joliet there was very, very few. There was only 2 other guys in there. So, and they helped recruit me when I was talking about going in the Army. So they got in 1939. So they've been there a whole year, and we all grew up together at that time. So, but as time passed, I played third base on the baseball team, and I was a good hitter, not a very good fielder. But at third base, nobody's a very good fielder because them balls come at you 100 miles an hour, and you just whoo. So you had to stop them anyhow. That's all. That was the main thing, just stop them. But we had a good baseball team. We played other groups, so it was fun. And then Detroit was quite interesting. You could ride a bus any place in Detroit, anytime, free. And then most of the movies were free, and then the hockey games were free, the baseball games were free. Well, the hard time was getting time off to go to all this. So, but we managed somehow or other. Sometimes we'd only see a half a game, or But the hard part of it was the 25 miles to Selfridge Field from Detroit. So the bus would drop us off there at 10 Mile Road and Gratiot, I think it was, to get back to Selfridge. It was at Mount Clemens. It was 25 miles. So, and if there was anybody in the Army, they'd pick you up. But if there wasn't, it was always a hard time getting back. And 11 o'clock was a curfew. We had to be back in for curfew. So we'd hang around the park until after 10:30 because everybody's going back to the base at that time. So we managed to get back and forth pretty easily. And the people were nice to us. And went to dances. We had a good time. And we got around to Detroit pretty good with that free transportation. So and we got to see a lot of things. And we went over to the island, Babel Island. It was, you took a boat over there. It was nice. And recruiting, and as recruit, you always got your dirty stick at the end, and what happens is you manage pretty good because you learn how to do it. So, but after there being a while, they treat us pretty good. And so they decided we had to go on maneuvers. We spent Christmas there. It was nice. That's a nice base. Learned how to rig a parachute, and they drop them with dummies. after you rigged it up, they'd take them up in the airplane and show the dummy out and then the parachute with it. So if it didn't open, the dummy, you wouldn't hurt the dummy. That's it. So, but you learn to be very, very careful. And you had these long chutes. They're about 30 feet, and then you packed them just exactly right. So you learn that, and then you learn mechanics. And that was quite interesting. Not being an auto mechanic before there, I never had a car, so I didn't know anything about motors or anything like that. It was a lot to learn. But, you know, you had to be practical. And once you're practical, you can learn pretty easy. If you were practical, it'd sink in pretty easy. It made sense. So we had to go on these maneuvers. And Beaumont, Texas was the first one. Here I go back to Texas. And we had a troop, I don't know, about 30 or 25, 30. We had all the kitchens and everything, and everything we had was self-sufficient. And we had all these trucks, and we'd ride the back end of the truck. The worst thing was being on a truck, and they decided we'll go for a couple, 3 hours without stopping. Everybody had to pee. Oh, that was something else. Accidents did happen, I guarantee you. And I don't know, I must have did something wrong, but they never did tell me. They were on KP duty when we got to Beaumont, Texas. Beaumont, Texas was quite a unique place. We were in a rice field, and the runway was shells, and we were in tents. We had beds, you know, that fold up. It wasn't too bad. So, but only one morning, it had rained that night, and I put my feet on the ground. It wasn't on the ground, it was in water. I said, what the hell do I do now? I'm all wet. So, but finally the day was warm and all that, and everything dried up, so it wasn't too bad. And after you figure out what you had to do, he said, well, these things could happen in any of the islands. I said, I guess so. So, but we managed, dried everything out, moved our tent, got out of that hole, and it was okay. So we had maneuvers there, we had takes off, and you know, it was kind of odd. They had crosses on the wings of the airplane, the P-38s. Oh, I forgot about the P-38s. We got our P-38s, and it said, I made sergeant then, and you're the crew chief on a P-38. This is back at Selfridge. And I says, what? You know, I'm just learning how to drive a car, and now you put this on my shoulders. And he says, here's some men, they'll help you out. And then there are factory men all over. So any questions, and then they give you a book, it must be about 2 inches thick, about the airplane. Oh, jeez. The more I read, the worse it got. Because you didn't understand the part or what was happening, but eventually you'd ask I think there was 1 to every 4 airplanes, a guy from the factory, and he was pretty sharp. And he said, don't make so much out of it. Just go along and then read everything you can. So that's what I did, and that helped a lot. But sometimes I didn't know what I was reading about. And I had to start up the airplane, and that wasn't that was pretty easy. The only problem with that, my legs were so short, and you know, in the airplane, when the pilot goes up, he's sitting on a parachute. It's about 8 inches thick. He's sitting on that, and it's a bucket-like. and a steel plant, and then he'd take their parachute with him to his tent to protect it, and I'd have to sit in there, and I'd have to put stuff, books and everything there, so my feet would be long enough to put the brakes on them, because you had to rev up the engine to pretty fast, wide open for a while, but you had shocks underneath the wheels, so it wouldn't move. But my biggest problem was my short legs, but I finally managed how to do that, and we went on. After about 3 months, we went on. We had the airplanes. We went down to Beaumont, Texas, with them, and went on maneuvers. On the airplanes, we were in the White Army, and we were fighting the Red Army. And the Red Army was partly naval airplanes, and we had the P-38. So it was quite interesting, and there was a lot of jokes because you had to bomb these places, and they used to throw out something a flower out of the bag, out of the cockpit. So it was kind of crazy, and so some of the pilots would stuff the chute from the gun injection shells with toilet paper. And they fly over to the camp there and then release the toilet paper and that stuff. You have rings about 30, 40 feet coming down. Things like that. It was a lot of crazy stuff going on. So finally, after that, quite a lot of rain down in Beaumont. Then we finally went to New Orleans. Oh, New Orleans was good. We put up our tents right next to Lake Pontchartrain, and that's where we stayed. And then we go into town, and every corner seems like it had an oyster bar. Every bar, it was an oyster bar. I never ate so many oysters in all my life, and I loved oysters. It's the first time I ever tasted them, and I liked them. You know, I liked about them is the hot sauce with it. Oh man, was that good! So I ate a lot of oysters. We had a good time. We were there till we were waiting for the South Carolina maneuvers, Columbia, South Carolina. So we were waiting for that, and it took us about 3 weeks. So we drove over there, and after having a good time, it was just when we were on there at Lake Pontchartrain, it was just a matter of getting everything back together, and that didn't take very long. And for the South Carolina maneuvers, and finally we got out of there and went over there. And by that time, the weather was getting cold. I remember the first night. Oh, jeez, I couldn't believe it. The first night we were in a regular tent, and we had blankets. Not enough of them though. So I went to sleep with full clothing on, shoes and all. By I think about 2 o'clock in the morning, I said, I can't stand it. I got to get out of here. It was cold. It got down near freezing. So we went into Columbia. A bunch of us got together and said, let's go to town and get a cup of coffee anyway. So we did, and we went in there and had coffee and warmed up. We waited till sunlight and come back. And boy, you know, the problem was we had probably enough stuff on top, but we never put nothing underneath. We learned to put we got all the newspapers we could find and put them underneath us and put a blanket underneath us, and that helped a lot. So after about a month of that, we learned, but the days were nice, but the nights were bad. South Carolina was just fair duty. It was mostly wars. We had to do a lot about planning for war. And then we decided to go back to Selfridge Field. Maneuvers were over. And at Selfridge Field, these guys would say, Ohio. And you go down the street, they say, Ohio. what the hell's Ohio? And I said, well, Ohio is over the hill in October. See, all these guys were recruited, and they wanted to get out of the Army at that time. And they said, Ohio, and they were going over the hill. So they want to get out of the Army. So, other than that, we got back to Selfridge, and there wasn't much to do. We worked on the airplanes, and and washed them up, and got them all nice and good. A lot of times we're out in the field, and the planes were all full of mud, and mud was our big factor, and we had to get all this mud off it, and we had to put spark plugs in. We had some problems. We had a lot of problems with airplanes because we didn't understand them too much. So, but we were learning slowly but surely. I had 4 guys under me, and none of them knew anything about airplanes. It's the first time I'd ever seen them, and we're all in the same boat. Anytime a problem come up, we get together, start discussing it, and by that time we didn't have the people from Lockheed to help us with it, so we were on our own. We tried to figure it out, and then if it was electrical, we could get this electrician, and he'd come over and help us. And if it was changing something, that was no problem, because changing plugs or gassing up and all that, just the routine stuff, keep airplanes warm. And at that time, we didn't even have belly tanks yet. We never used belly tanks, so or bombs. We didn't have to deal with them anymore. So it was fairly easy. And some airplanes had trouble. Most airplanes didn't have any trouble at all. So we get back to Selfridge, and boy, that was nice. Home cooked meals, and it was getting near Christmas, and we were having a good time and everything. And then one Sunday afternoon, I'm laying in bed, and I hear that the only communication we had was the radio with the outside world, and that was on all the time. It was either music or somebody talking on it, and all the problems we had in the United States. So he said Honolulu was bombed by the Japanese. And I hollered, "Hey, where the hell is Honolulu?" Nobody knew it was. Nobody knew. And then we found out later it was Hawaii, and then it was one of the islands, and we didn't know exactly where it was, but we knew it was one. How bad it really was. We finally found out how really bad it was. So I says, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This was happening at 1:30. I says, I'm gonna put on my uniform and go downtown. And I did. There was no problem. I just put on my uniform, took off. I went to Detroit. So I says, I figured they're gonna try to get me. So I went to the hockey game, and I sat way up in the back. Nobody was sitting up there. And I repeated 3 or 4 times. All personnel get back to Selfridge and all that. So I resisted that. And then finally, some policeman found me and said, "Hey, you got to get out of here." So I did. So I got back probably around 10 o'clock or so, midnight, something like that. And the guy said, a couple of guys said, "You been in town?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, you've been lucky. We've been working our fannies off." I said, "What have you been doing?" He said, "We're packing, putting everything in boxes." And so I had to take my uniform off and start working. We worked in the wee hours in the morning, and we got everything together in a couple of days. We were ready to go. And some of the guys flew in commercial airlines. I didn't want to fly because I always get worried about sickness. So they said, "Well, get on the train." I said, "Okay." The train was about 10 cars, there was quite a few. We had a kitchen in one. We had, it was a troop train. And on the side, every station we stopped, and the war was on then, so we had people, coffee and the Red Cross, talk to us and wished us luck, and well, we had a good time. It was interesting. It was hard, because you had to get get your food at one end and walk all the way back and stuff like that. But we managed. And the side of the train we had Tokyo or bust in big letters. Somebody wrote that on. It took us 7 days to get to San Diego, the Navy base. We get to San Diego. No, first we got to someplace in California. Then we had to take another train, a different. Oh no, they just switched us, and we got all the way down to San Diego, someplace in L.A. or north of L.A. I don't know where it was exactly, but so we finally got them. And guess what happened? No Navy personnel aboard. There was one submarine, and everything was out of there. Everything's gone. So, and we had to take over the whole base. And what we did, we had to patrol the West Coast. So they load the machine guns and everything on the airplanes and got everything ready. So we flew out of there. We patrolled the West Coast, part of the West Coast, anyhow. So the day before Christmas, 1941, I get a appendix attack, and I knew it was appendix because I've had them before. And I started vomiting, and they put me on I went to infirmary, and they put me on a ambulance and took me to Camp Pendleton, which is up the road. And I get to Camp Pendleton, they said, we don't have any doctors here. So there's no doctors there. And so back to San Diego, and, probably in the afternoon sometime, and they didn't know what to do with me. So finally, around 6 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they said, well, you have to go to town, and the hospital there will take care of you. So I get there, and they said, well, we have to operate right now. So they did. They operated on me at Christmas Eve. It was about 7 or 8 o'clock. And it was nice duty. I was there 21 days. I got to know that hospital pretty well. I was walking around, having a nice time there. The food was good, It was a civilian hospital, so they treated me nice. So after 21 days, they said, well, you're discharged. You can go back to your unit. So I went back to my unit in San Diego, and guess what? They had moved out. I said, oh, geez, what do I do now? So I hitchhiked up to Camp Pendleton, which is up the road, about 150 miles. I get there, and I hung around there for a while, and I trying to find where my outfit went. And that's a Navy rather than Army, so they made some convenience. Somebody says they think they're at LAX in Los Angeles. I said, well, I'll hitchhike up there and find out. And I got there, and some guy says, where the hell you been? I said, I've been sick. And hardly anybody missed me. A couple guys did. They asked me how I was and all that. So I got back into duty there. And then LAX, we patrolled that, and we lost one airplane. He got in, and another airplane got too close to the water, knocked the propeller right off. And he got back to base okay. But that Sunday afternoon, that guy went in. Oh, that was terrible. We lost a pilot. And LAX worked out of a hangar, one hangar. We were at one end of the airport, and not very far. We had our own private gate and everything. We had our own private hangar, and we were all along there. The only thing we didn't like about it is warm weather. You know, it's wintertime, and the weather was fairly warm, but the wind off the ocean was terrible. Oh, was it icy. So, but there was weeds around the airplane, so we'd go out in the weeds and make a little hole out there. And it was so, lay our blanket down there, boy, that was nice. So we'd get some sleep in. And then one evening, my brother comes in from Illinois. He was at Fort Ord, and he wanted to see a P-38. Gee, I says, I can't go. It's after dark. And finally, I asked around. I said, "Go on, try to show it to him." First thing he said, "I want to get in that pilot seat." And I said, "Okay." I opened it up, got him in there, and I had a flashlight, and I was showing him all the stuff and everything. Boy, was he happy about that. He was with another guy from there, and he had some time off, and he was in the 6th Army. He was in a artillery, and he was on these small light airplanes. That's what he did, and then he'd fly to observation on the airplane. It was 2-seater, and they'd go up and they'd see where the shells would hit, and they could direct the shells where they landed. So that's what he did, and it's just an observation plane. A little, I forget the name of the airplane. Just a little one engine 2-seater, small. But that's what he did with the 6th Army. And then we patrolled. Every night it seemed like we had some celebrity would want us to be there at a show and all that. I got to see Frank Sinatra, the Modernaires, let's see, Monroe. Let's see. There was. I didn't know the celebrities that good, but it was nice. The nice part of it was one night I was after supper, around 5 o'clock. I was hitchhiking. I was going someplace in L.A. This guy picks me up. He says, "How about coming to my house?" I said, "Okay." So I went, and he had a daughter my age. He introduced me to his daughter, and he worked for the Army at that time. He was a civilian. Him and his wife, and wow, we become very, very good friends. Every time they have something doing there, he'd call me up and come on. I said, "Yeah, come." They treated me really nice. They're part of their family, and so that was really nice. And then the celebrities always had, and I can't remember every one of them. The only thing I remember about Frank Sinatra, I was sitting on the stage right underneath him, and he was at the mic. I'm looking up there, and his teeth were all black underneath him. They're all filled just about. And I said, I looked at him and I said, "Hell, them are fillings, you know." I said, and Ole Olson had seen him the night before, and he said, "This guy's a pretty good singer." He said, "You got to see him." And so we went there, and I didn't dance at that time. We went up and sat on the stage, at the edge of the stage. It was only about 2 foot high, and the band was all behind them. So it was pretty good. Spent the whole night there. One night it was interesting. They said, "You got to go to see this place where the queers run." I said, "What is that?" I didn't know anything about queers or anything like that. And he said, "Oh, it's guys dressed as women, and then they put on a stage." Oh, we went to it. There's about 15 of us who went to it. Oh, it was good. You know, they were good. But this one guy with us, he must have been drinking too much. But he starts getting in trouble with them. And finally they threw him out. Well, when he gets thrown out, they're going to have to throw all of us out. So everybody started raising hell, and they finally got us out of the place. And I don't know what happened, but anyhow, they had a big sign there. I forget the name of the sign. It's about 20 feet long, about 4 feet wide on the outside. So they cut it down, and they put it on one of the huts we were living in. Oh, that was funny. But we never went back to that place because they didn't want us around. But actually the show was pretty good. And let's see, Glenn Miller, we went to see him. And then after the show, he had a 15-minute show nationally put on. And after the show, we went up on stage and talked to all of them. And he had a nice-looking gal that was a singer. Boy, she was a beauty. And talked to her. I never got to talk to Glenn Miller himself. Most of the guys did. But I didn't know who he was anyhow. Let's see. Then there was other places that we could go to. Cyril's. They had a show for us, and I'm trying to think of this one guy that he picked us up and took us back to base, and he says, I can put on a show for you, and who do I contact and all that, and he gave me all the information. So I took it to the guy, Captain Johnson, and I told him all about it. And he said, yeah, we'll get in contact with him. And so about a month or so later, here he's putting on a show in a hanger on a flatbed. He was funny. He was pretty good. And I forget the names of a lot of these people we went to around there. But it seemed like every night they had something. They invited us someplace along there. And we had fun. And let's see, what else is happening? I got acquainted with a B-25 there. And the reason I got acquainted with it, it was near us. And it made so much noise. They had the short stacks on it. And I said, boy, what a noisy 2-engine job that is. So went over there and started talking to the crew chief and all that. And he told us all about it. And then he asked them where they thought they were going. He says, oh, some island someplace. And then they asked us, and we said, yeah, we think we're going there too, because we had training in an island. So it came on in the spring, and we were hearing rumors, you know. We had to pack stuff up and, you know, get everything ready. And then our outfit broke up. The 82nd was formed right there, and half the guys went to the 82nd, and I stayed in with the first fighter group. And I lost about 3 good buddies of mine, and we hung around together all the time. And I didn't know what happened to them, but anyhow, they formed another place. I think it was Glendale, so they had to leave. And then we started packing. And I said, what island? Everybody's saying, what island are we going to? And we were guessing and all that. And pretty soon they says, well, certain money were going on by airplane, certain was going to go by train. Where are we going, you know? I thought we were going to San Francisco and go overseas. And no, we're going to Bangor, Maine. Where the heck is Bangor, Maine? The other end of the country, I know that, but where because duty in L.A. was beautiful. The drinks were on the house, you know, and especially that night when they decided to B-25s were going to fly and bomb Tokyo. Well, after that raid, drinks around the house all over town. So they treat us real nice. And so we left and we went to go to Bangor, Maine. So I got an airplane. I don't remember much about this. And all I remember being in Bangor, Maine. I had forgotten all about it. But I know some of us flew, most of us flew. Crew chiefs all flew. I found that out later. And it was interesting. And Bangor, we had all our airplanes lined up in a row, and they had to do modification, do this, do that. I mean, we were really busy. And then we'd have our nights off, and Bangor's a little town, so, and not much to do. There was a few dances, but not much. And then one night, after, doing modification, doing this, get everything ready, we're leaving. So we worked until about middle of the night, and then we got everything ready to take off the next day. Airplanes took off, and we took off in airplanes. Where are we going? We're going to the West Coast, LAX. Oh, man, what's going on? So I think I got as far as Kentucky, someplace in that area. And they said, go back to Bangor. So we find out later that the Japanese fleet were headed for the West Coast. And they were worried the West Coast was going to get bombed. So we, incidentally, one night while we were at the West Coast, the guns start going off. And every fifth is 40 caliber guns were shooting. And every fifth bullet on these cannons were a tracer. And that sky was red. You couldn't believe it. Everybody shooting. And they had the lights on, and there were balloons. They find out there were balloons later. They thought they were raiders, coming over. And here we are standing outside our building and looking up, and pretty soon we find, hey, something's hitting here, and the shrapnel from the cannons was falling, and we didn't even have our helmets on or anything, so we got inside. I don't think anybody was injured from that, but it was just one of those crazy nights that we had in L.A. And we're back in Maine, and got everything apart again, and we had to put belly tanks on. They had to rehearse to keep using gasoline, because the first landing would be Labrador, and then from Labrador to Greenland, that's a long flight. So that's what they're worried about. And it would be the first flight of an all-American unit going to Europe. Normally they're by sea. And the rest of our unit went by on the Queen Mary. Incidentally, on the Queen Mary, what happens, as they got near England, these destroyer boats would cut in front of the boat, they crisscross in front of it, so submarines couldn't hit them. The Queen Mary was very fast, and they didn't need an escort, but we had these, when we got close to England, they had escorts came out and tried to escort in the port. And one of the destroyers got hit by the Queen Mary and broke it right in half. They kept on going. Them guys were unlucky. That's all I can say. But nobody knew whatever, actually they didn't even know what happened right away, but they said they hit a destroyer, one of the destroyers. So, tragedy there. So they got to England, and we got to, we left Bangor and went to Labrador. Now Labrador was nothing. The best thing out there was they had steam huts, because mostly there were woodsmen up there. So we went there and they hit us with branches afterwards, after we got all nice and hot. Boy, well, it was really, really nice. That was the most interesting part of it. It was out in the middle of nowhere. So the next day, we all took off for Greenland. Greenland is a long flight, and as we went in, the mountains on each side of us, we went this fjord, and we landed in an uphill direction. In other words, a hill going right up into the ice caps. And that was interesting. We stayed there for maybe a month or so, something like that, half a month. I don't recall it exactly. The only thing that was bad, we didn't have nets around our face, because the gnats were like a million right over your head all the time, and they would attack you, your eyelids, your nose, your mouth, your ears, until they got those caps. What we was doing was servicing airplanes that were coming through. So we had our job. Then we find out the 94th, I was in the 27th, but the 94th lost 4 airplanes and a B-17. The B-17 was the guider. They had all the guiding stuff. And the P-30s didn't have any guiding stuff. And the first guy went in with his wheels down. And what happened to him, it flipped right over. As soon as the nose wheel hit, it dug right in and flipped right upside down. But the snow was pretty deep, so he didn't get hurt. They dug him out. He was upside down, and they dug him out. And the other ones put their wheels up, and they crash land, 3 other ones, and the 17 crash land. Incidentally, one of the airplanes was dug up about 20 years ago, and it was down 168 feet in the ice cap. And they took steam and they steamed it up, and most of the stuff was crushed. And they got one P-38 up, and they had to modify it. It cost $3 million to get it modified and new parts put on it and all that. So, and that's the only one they dug up. It's still flying today. They call it the Glacier Girl, and but all the pilots got out of it. They got over there and everybody was okay. And the B-17 also, and they got back to our base. But we found out all this after we left for Greenland. We left for Greenland. Oh, the nets, yeah. We had to service that. We got nets for our faces. And some of the guys said the mosquitoes were really bad, but I don't remember. They didn't bother us that much. And, incidentally, it was on a side of a glacier, actually, the runway, and it ended up right near the water at the bay there. And this is in June, so what happens then is these icebergs be floating all over the place, and right below the runway there's the one sticking up about 10 feet, and the guys decided, let's go down there and knock that thing off. So I had the Thompson machine gun. I had 2 clips of 20 shots each. That's 40 shots. And these other guys had their rifles. So we went down the end of the runway, and this one was sticking up there, and we figured maybe an airplane had hit that and crashed. So we shot, and all that was happening, click, 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 and there'd be little pieces flying off there. When the bullets hit that iceberg, nothing happened. So we unloaded all that, and you know what they told us when we got, the next day? They said, well, we're taking off for Iceland. And he says, we got to be extra careful because of the submarines could be waiting for us coming across there. So, and we had little holes in the windows with rubber plugs in them, and you could stick the gun out there and shoot. So, and here, us guys, there's 5 of us didn't have any ammunition left, so it got a little scary. I said, well, here, we don't have anything to shoot them on. So we flew over, but no incidents. We didn't have any incidents with the submarines. So we got to Iceland. We landed at Reykjavik. Reykjavik is the capital. And it was nice there because the land of the midnight sun, which made it very, very nice. And so we went in there, and we would be at midnight or something like that. We'd be playing volleyball. Then we had to have patrol duty and all that. And patrol duty was we had our guns, and we had 4 hours off and 2 hours patrol duty, and 24 hours a day. That's what we had to do. So I don't know what they're afraid of. And there was other outfits on there, at Keflavik beside us. And every day around noontime, and here just about every day, here comes a 4-engine job, and the old red flag go out, and the sirens would go off, and we would actually we didn't do anything. We just sit there because it was pretty routine, and it was just taking pictures of us. That's all they were doing. And we went up. So one day they decided, let's go up and see if it's going to come in today. They come around at the same time because it was a long way from Norway. They'd come over from Norway and take the pictures. And so here comes it, B-24, German airplane. I forget the name of it, was it Fokker or Wolf? Oh, I don't know. Well, anyway, they shot it down. And so it was the first American squadron to shoot down a enemy airplane in the European theater. So that was pretty good recognition. And then Ole Olsen and I decided to go to town and have something. He could understand the language a little bit, so it wasn't bad with him. And that language was so foreign to me, I didn't know anything. I was a real dummy. So he could talk it, and he's pretty good. And we had a beer. The beer was 0.5%. They called near beer. And then we found out that they heated their houses with glacier hot water. All they had to do was turn on the spigot, the thermostat would open the valve up, and the water would come in hot, and you'd heat your house. And that's how the whole town heated their houses and stuff, their business and stuff like that. So just water from the glaciers, hot water. So that's what they used. And then I noticed when we serviced these airplanes, a couple of guys were tipsy, I said, what you been drinking? Oh, nothing, I said, you're drunk. And I said, oh, some guys were saying they were drinking the alcohol in the hair cream or whatever it was, I don't know. Well, anyhow, they made excuses. So I never found this out until I got to England. What happened, these guys would go in, and when we serviced these airplanes, they'd look for whiskey, because the pilots would put a quart of whiskey or something in there, and they'd steal that. And that's how they were getting drunk. So never found out until then. So it was quite really, something that makes you laugh. But how could a guy get drunk on near beer? So, and then the girls were really beautiful, all blondes and nice rosy cheeks, but all their teeth were missing always. They were all rotten. I don't know what happened, but they fertilized the fields, whatever they grew there, with fish, rotten fish. Boy, you go past those places, oh, did it stink. But that's how they fertilize their fields. And Iceland was pretty nice duty. And we played a lot of volleyball. And you know, the only part when you don't have any midnight, you know, like get dark or something like that, it just gets dusk, that's all. You know, you lose track of time, you really do. So after that, they decided that after a few months of being there, that we have to go to England. So we flew over to Scotland. Scotland, we went to, first night they had a big dance there and everything. Big party for us. And we were only there a couple nights. And then we went into our permanent place. And it was Bath, England. It's right near Bath, England. That duty there was, they were starting to fly into, our pilots started flying into France and places like that. So it was the first test of war for us. So we didn't lose any airplanes or anything. Then there one airplane came in, it was a British, I forget the name of it. He crashed into the hangar. Oh man, talk about a fire, and he got killed. So it was terrible. Right in front of us. But that's the only bad incident we had there. And we'd go to town. You could take baths at the bath. And most of the officers took that place, but we went, there's a lot of places, dances and everything. There are a lot of dances. And the taverns would, they'd open at 6 at night and close at 10 at night, and all you could drink is 2 beers or 2 whiskeys. So what we do is get the whiskey and put it in the beer, and what they call boil, 2 little Boilermakers is enough for anybody. So, but England, we met a lot of people. They were really nice to us. Everybody on bicycles. Everybody had a bicycle. We even had them. Everybody bought a bicycle, and we rode all over. Hardly any cars. There was no petrol. Oh, one night we were going to town, and they start shooting at us. What's going on here? The Civil Patrol. So what happened is that we had our lights on like dummies. And at that time they were still bombing Bristol and places like that. And they were all jittery, you know. So we learned something there. And but I'll tell you that 2 beers and 2 whiskeys, oh, you had it for the night. I did anyway. I didn't like it. I didn't drink them all the time, but every once in a while I'd try it. Oh, no, just too much for me. And it kills the day. It kills the night. I mean, we had to be back at base at 11 o'clock, so then you had to be on duty the next day. So the first sergeant, my sergeant, the head of my line, he says, "Hey, Felix, they're after you." I said, "Why?" He said, "You're neglecting your duty. Get on the stick." And I says, "Okay." So instead of going out and get drunk and I settle down and start working on airplanes, and instead of sleeping and screwing off. So I did miss it because it was nice, but I wanted to stay with the 27th, and that was it. So he was my buddy. He always helped me. So he was probably in his 40s by that time. He was an old sergeant, been around, ready to retire. So it was nice of him to help me out. He always helped me out. He'd drive the truck and he'd say, "Felix, come up and sit in the front with me." I was okay. At that time, I was a staff sergeant already, so I had to get moved out. And, you know, anytime they had any problem with anybody, they get rid of them. Get rid of them. Because they're getting ready to go overseas, see? So that's, you know, no, we were overseas, but get ready to move. And not much more. Oh, the food, oh, God, it was terrible. Mostly the food was, they had mutton, and then they have mutton gravy, they have Brussels sprouts, and the mutton gravy covered the potatoes. And you went to eat that, and it smelled so bad that you just, I can't, you just couldn't eat it. So we go to town and see if we could find some fried eggs. That's how we existed there. It was really bad. And then they ate a lot of cookies and stuff like that. I could never get used to tea. I used to drink it, but I could never get used to it. We mostly had coffee anyway, so. But in town, everybody had tea, that's it. And, yeah, we met a lot of people, you know, from the people that, you know, a lot of women we met, because every dance, we go to a lot of dances, and mostly all women, some GIs in there, that's it. Very nice duty. So finally, we get a chance to move out of England. Hold on a minute.